All right, today we're diving into a story that feels like it's just around the corner from our own reality. It's a story about a cure born from desperation, a consequence nobody could have ever imagined, and a choice that could change what it means to be human.
So, let me ask you this right up front. How far would you really go to protect your child? It's a simple question, right? But the answer gets unbelievably complicated when their actual survival is on the line. And I want you to hold that question in your mind, because for the parents in this story, this wasn't some thought experiment.
To really get the choice these parents made, you have to picture the world they were living in. And honestly, it was a world that was just drowning in fear and grief.
Yeah, this wasn't some distant threat. It was an absolute daily catastrophe. Imagine hospitals completely overwhelmed, refrigerated trucks becoming makeshift morgues lining the streets. We're talking six-figure death tolls every single day. With vaccines years away, parents were desperate for any kind of shield, any advantage they could give their kids.
And then a shield appeared. It was called FutureShield. Now, this was not some mainstream vaccine. Oh, no. This was a radical, kind of legally gray therapy using CRISPR technology. You know, CRISPR, it's basically a genetic tool that can find and replace specific little pieces of your DNA. And FutureShield, offered in these quiet, discreet clinics, promised to edit the genes of unborn children to give them permanent immunity.
The woman who created it, Dr. Maya Ortiz, she wasn't some kind of monster. She was a brilliant scientist who truly, deeply believed her invention was a force for good, that it was a way to finally fight back against this plague. And for hundreds of thousands of terrified parents, you know what? Her belief was all the reassurance they needed. So the pandemic eventually subsided, and the world tried its best to forget. For years, the kids born with FutureShield, they seemed totally normal. They were healthy. You couldn't tell them apart from anyone else. The cure had worked. Or so it seemed. But then, these strange, unexplainable reports started to trickle in. As you can see on this timeline, there was this 5 to 7 year honeymoon period. Everything looked perfect, zero side effects. But under the surface of all that calm, something strange, something completely unintended, was quietly taking root. And listen, these weren't just stories of kids with big imaginations. These were documented, verifiable events. Think about this. A child in Texas suddenly starts sobbing, describing the fear of another kid hiding from a bully in a closet in Illinois, in real time. It was baffling, it was scientifically impossible, and it was deeply, deeply unsettling for everyone. Well, once these stories went public, society just fractured. There was no middle ground. People saw these children as one of two things. Either they were a miracle, or they were a monstrosity. I mean, just look at the language people started using. It was so extreme. On one side, you had people calling them the next step in human evolution, a more connected, more empathic form of humanity. And on the other, they were being called Wi-Fi kids, a new class of human with an ability that made them dangerously different. The debate was just white hot. And then this happened. This video goes viral. A group of these kids, without saying a single word, somehow sense that a classmate is being bullied and they just appear. They form this silent, protective circle. Now, for some people, this was a beautiful, amazing, active, collective empathy. But for others, it was a chilling display of coordinated, silent power. So while the whole world was busy arguing about this on social media and cable news, the government was using a very different tool to look at the situation. A tool with zero emotion, zero bias. Argus is basically the ultimate pattern recognition machine. It pulls data from everywhere. Hospital records, school reports, social media, you name it. And it doesn't see individuals. It saw all these weird, simultaneous events and realized that the FutureShield kids weren't acting like a group of individuals. They were acting like a single, massive, interconnected network. And this is the label it came up with. I mean, what a terrifyingly sterile phrase. It just strips away all the humanity, right? The kids, the parents, the empathy, all gone. And it reframes the whole thing as just a security problem that needs to be managed. At first, Argus was, cautious. It set the threat level to yellow, which basically means watch and wait. The network was an anomaly, sure, a potential risk, but it hadn't done anything to cross a critical line. Not yet. But as Argus kept crunching the data, more videos of them acting in perfect sync, more reports of shared thoughts, clear evidence of a network that could defend itself, its simulations led to one stark conclusion. The potential of this network was too high, its behavior was too unpredictable. The classification jumped to level red, and that set off alarms at the highest levels of national security.
And this brings us to the final chapter. This is where the AI's cold, logical verdict starts to translate into terrifying, real-world possibilities. The public debate, that was over. For the government, this was now purely a matter of risk management.
When this directive leaked, it just sent a shockwave of horror through the country. Kinetic options. It's such a bloodless, bureaucratic term for lethal force. The government was now on record officially considering drone strikes as a tool to contain a network of elementary school children. And this is where a really dangerous feedback loop starts. The children, through their weird connection, they couldn't read the classified documents, obviously. But they could feel the change. They could sense this rising drumbeat of adult fear, of anxiety. And it was all being aimed right at them. And this is the climax. In schoolyards and parks all across the country, the exact same scene plays out at the exact same time. It's this silent, defiant act of unity. But to the Argus AI, this isn't kids holding hands. It's a coordinated mobilization event. It's the final piece of data it needed to justify extreme, decisive action. And that's exactly where the story leaves us. Just suspended in that moment. Fingers are hovering over buttons in some secure bunker somewhere. A drone is hanging in the air, and down on the ground, a new kind of humanity looks up, knowing, feeling that it's being watched. And we're all left wondering what happens next.